Yeah, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for a way to control our time. And you are in luck on this training right now, because today I'm going to show you a realistic blueprint for becoming financially free with apartments in as little as 12 months. And the good news is we can do it even if we don't have any prior experience or your own money. All right, before we get started, quick disclaimer. The results I'm going to show you in this call are no guarantees that you'll get the same results. And to be successful, you need a mix of desire, good plan, solid work ethics. All right, so if we're on the same page around that, type in yes in the chat box. Attorneys are making me do that. Type in yes. All right, it's awesome. So the first thing I want you guys to get very clear on this is idea of a rat race number. The rat race number is the amount of passive income you would need to cover your living expenses. Now, everyone wants $1 million coming in every single month, but if you had enough money coming in month after month to cover your living expenses, you could quit your job if you wanted to. Is that right? Type yes in the chat box if that's right. Right. So that is your meaningful first goal. After you've achieved that goal, go ahead and make $1 million a month, but that's not really what changes your lifestyle. What changes your lifestyle is passive income coming through from the apartment buildings. Now, think about this number right now. What are your living expenses? Now, think about maybe if you saved some money and you did, what could you get it down to? What is that number? And then put it in the chat box. All right, put that rat race number in the chat box right now. That's awesome. All right, that is your goal. Okay, with everything you're doing from now, a lot of people aren't clear about this number. Write that number down. This is for you, for more so than for me. So that's going to be your initial goal for getting out of the rat race. All right, quickly about me, for those of you guys that haven't heard my story. This is the book that ruined my life. Great book though, isn't it? Who here's read Rich Dad Poor Dad? Type in yes in the chat box. Yeah, well, for me, it wasn't really that great. You know, I did what it said and lost over $1 million. All right, so let me back up a little bit. Late 90s, I joined a software startup. This is me at a company called Web Methods out of Northern Virginia. This was at a conference in San Francisco. I was in the right place, the right time. We went public in March of 2000. You can Google it. The most successful software IPO at the time, and put a bunch of money in my pocket. Then I read this little purple book. And at the time, my big idea was to go not after real estate so much, but after pizza restaurants. So I was on this journey for financial freedom, and I was surrounded by a bunch of actually burger franchisees. And they said, oh, it costs this much to open a restaurant. You're going to hire a guy to run everything, and you sit back and count the passive income. So is that sweet? That's exactly what Robert Kiyosaki taught in his book. So I signed up for a pizza franchise, and that's my operator in the middle, Chris. He ran all the restaurants. So long story short with the restaurants. Now, while this was going on, I had quit my job, and I did everything at once. I learned how to flip houses. I took apartment boot camps. I learned how to trade stocks and options. But my big idea was this restaurant chain. I had on paper a plan to 20 restaurants, and that was going to be my financial freedom plan. Long story short about this, I subsequently lost everything in this experiment. And, you know, there's a reason, though, that this presentation isn't called How to Lose Money Investing in Pizza Franchises. I did get out of it, and it was real estate, but it's maybe not in the way that you think. Well, certainly the way I thought in real estate was flipping houses, and that's what I did. I clawed myself out of this mess by flipping houses. And so this is a before and after shot of some of my houses. And we did like 3 dozen houses in 3 years, and the good news, we made a bunch of money, but the bad news was it was a ton of work. And now I read all the books, I had set up the systems, but it was still a lot of work. And if you're on top of it, it was very difficult to take a week off. There's always something going wrong with these houses. So I said, man, let's do this. Why don't I shift gears? Why don't we do rentals? So I put pen to paper. I said, okay, if I want $10,000 a month, I can get every house to cash flow $200 per month, which, by the way, was a stretch, especially in this area, which is Northern Virginia and Maryland and Washington, D.C. I would need 50 houses. Now, I just flipped 36. I knew how much work that was, and I also knew how much work it would be to manage 50 houses, and that was insane. Meanwhile, I had gotten into an apartment building, a little bit of an afterthought, as a 12-unit in Washington, D.C., and it was quietly sending me mailbox money. So I was like, shoot, why don't I do a little bit less of this and a little bit more of that? And that's when I became a little more intentionally, and I studied the matter a little bit closer. I said, why don't I get a whole bunch of red houses, a few red houses, and not do a whole bunch of greenhouses? So I said, what are the advantages of the apartment buildings? First of all, it was much more passive. The reason for that is because I can put a professional manager in place for an apartment building. You can do it on the house side, but it's very expensive. It's very unusual to do that unless you get to a very large portfolio. I like the fact that I can have a professional manager in place, and it was a lot less work for me. They would handle everything. The second thing I liked is I liked the fact that I can control the value. So I had seen the real estate prices drop so badly in 2008, and it was completely out of control. But with commercial real estate, as you guys probably may know, I control the value. I can have a box valued $1 million, and next to it, the same identical looking box, it's worth $1.5 million. The difference is only the amount of income the box produces. So I could take this $1 million box, I can make it produce more income, so it's like the box on the right, and now I can sell it for a profit, or I can refinance. So I can control the value of the asset a lot more. I really like that at all as well. Financing was a major advantage because I can get unlimited financing. For the houses, as you know, there's a limit to how much you can get. You have to get very creative around that. But with apartments buildings, it's basically unlimited. And even better, you don't have to personally guarantee the loan. That's amazing. The fourth benefit is that I can easily raise money for apartment buildings. Really like that. People understand real estate, and interestingly, how multifamily performed in the last recession was extremely favorable. So residential default rate was 4%, multifamily only 0.4%. So the default rate was almost zero. So it made it really easy to raise money from investors. And most importantly, it was scalable, meaning I could start small, but very quickly, with a small number of deals, generate the passive income so I could get out of this rat race that I was in. I created my own rat race with a house flipping business, and I didn't really like it at all. Now, my problem was I had several problems at this point. I didn't have any experience with apartment buildings, and I didn't have any cash. So you might think, oh yeah, Michael, you flipped 3 dozen houses. And that's what I said too. I called up the brokers and they're like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. But how many apartment buildings have you done? And I said, well, 0, but look at all the houses I flipped. And it was incredible how little, actually no credit I got for my house flipping stuff that I was doing for the apartment building. So after I made these calls, I quickly realized that I essentially had no experience at all. And I had none of my own cash. So the house flipping, by the way, just so you know, I was doing with private investors that I had raised the money for because I had at this point all my money deployed in the restaurants, and they were actually going pretty good at this point. They were going okay, but I deployed all my own cash. So I thought I needed a ton of money and a bunch of experience, and I was really glad to discover that I didn't need either of those. So this is the first apartment building deal. It was 2011. It was a 12-unit property in Washington, D.C. I bought it with none of my money at all. And that deal, that single first deal, and we're going to talk about the first deal a lot, really changed my life forever because it set me on the path of financial freedom that I was seeking. And I know for sure, talking to you right now, that I can do the same exact thing for you as well. And so, now I control over $27 million assets, and this figure changes, weekly. But more importantly than the assets that we have is the amount of students we've helped buy. We've helped students purchase over 2,300 units valued of $86 million. And so I'm measuring my success not so much through my own, but through the success of others. That's kind of my mission right now. And this is I'm having a lot of fun. I'm traveling whenever I want. This was a 30-day trek through the national parks with my family. I can volunteer with my Uganda mission. I've been there twice. This is Ronald in Uganda. And I can teach, and I love teaching. I love teaching. So speaking of teaching, let's get right into the 4 secrets, because I know that's what you're dying to hear me teach on. So the 4 secrets are how to raise money as much as you need, how to get your offers accepted, even if you have no experience and or proof of funds, they always go together. How do you make offers? I'm going to show you how to do it in just 10 minutes. And then I'm going to show you some ways you can do your first deal in 90 days. Is that pretty cool? All right, type yes in the chat box if you're ready. Type yes. Come on, type yes. All right. Hey, let's get started with secret number 1. So raising all the money you want. So I told you I built all my restaurants. I deployed my entire net worth. I just went all in. I was like, I'm going all in because I want permanent financial freedom. Now, it didn't turn out that way, but but when the recession recovered and I started clawing myself out with real estate. I wanted to flip houses, but the problem was that I deployed all the money in the restaurants. So I was like, shoot, maybe I'll see if some of my friends and family want to loan me money to fund these flips. And I remember when I got my first commitment for $25,000 from a friend, I had this huge aha moment when I realized that I could flip as many houses as I wanted if I raised the money from others. And at one point I deployed about $1 million and we flipped those 3 dozen houses over the next 3 years. And it occurred to me at that point, my gosh, I can raise money. It doesn't matter how much or little I have, I can actually raise the money from other people, and they were grateful for the opportunity. Now, a lot of times I get people that tell me, the money really isn't out there. I don't know anybody with money. So let's do a little poll here. All right. So if you have at least $25,000 to invest in real estate, type in 25K in the chat box. Now do that right now. All right. Now, if you have more than 50,000 to deploy in real estate in some way or fashion, type in 50K. All right. If you have 100K, put in 100K. If you have more than 100K, put in 100K plus. All right, I'm just looking at the stream here, and I can't do math in my head, but as you can see here on this call alone, there's so much money on this call. And if you did the same exact poll at your local monthly RIA meeting, you would get exactly the same result. Every single month in your local RIA or your local meetups, and even your existing sphere of influence, there's so much money in there. It is incredible how much money there is. You just have to know how to tap into it. We're going to talk about that right now. Once you're past the fact that, oh my gosh, there's no money out there, when in fact there is, the next thing is, all right, Michael, I got you here. But help me with this problem. I don't have a deal under contract, so how am I going to raise the money? Okay, that's a good problem. I mean, that's a valid problem. On the other hand, oh my gosh, Michael, I just got lucky and someone just accepted my offer. Now I have 45 days to raise the money. There's no way I can do that, right? And the answer is, yeah, probably not. And so people throw up their hands and go, see, I told you, can't be done. So I'm going to show you how to solve this problem. You guys ready? Type it yes in the chat box if you're ready. Yeah, so here's how we're going to solve this problem, of this chicken egg problem. It's called the sample deal package. The sample deal package is an investor package that you create, and it's everything about it is real. It's got photos, it's got financial projections, it's got neighborhood and market information. It's got a little bit about you and your team, and everything about it is real except for the fact that you don't have it on contract. Okay, so the way you go about doing this is you find a deal. So you say you go to loopnet.com. Loopnet.com is a great way to find brokers specifically, but you can find deals on them, have them send you a deal, and from that deal, you create this sample deal package. And you make it all look pretty or whatever, and this is what you use as a conversation piece with your investors. Now, you tell them that you don't have this under contract, but you use it as a conversation piece. So now here's how you use the sample deal package. All right. Number one, talk to everyone. Okay, talk to everyone you know. You got to start with your sphere of influence. You gotta talk with everybody. Don't discriminate, especially in the beginning. In the beginning, don't really think about raising money. I know you think your mind goes, I gotta raise money, Don't think that way, okay? Think more about being intentional with your relationships. Okay, so maybe if you're going to a Boy Scouts or baseball meeting, instead of shooting the breeze with the other parents about, sports, politics, or the weather, okay, don't do that. Okay, share your enthusiasm about this newfound thing you have for apartment buildings. Oh, I'm so excited. I'm getting started with this apartment building. I have a mentor. I just did a property site with it, and I have these investors. We're getting a 13% average annual return, and you're just talking. You're sharing your excitement. Now, you got to make sure that you get a series of yeses, okay? So you're not going to call up Frank, who you haven't talked to in 2 years, who's a former coworker, and say, Frank, you're not going to believe it. I'm getting this apartment building thing. I need $100,000. Are you in? They're going to say, what? No. Okay, so don't ask Frank that question unless you've had a previous conversation with Frank where you can expect a yes to that question. So if you haven't seen someone in a while, say, hey, Frank, hey, man, it's been so while. You want to catch up for a cup of coffee? And Frank will say, what? Yes. They will say yes. Oh, I haven't seen you in a while. Let's catch up. Wow, great. Now you have a coffee with Frank, and now you can be intentional in the conversation. Do you see how that works? Type yes in the chat box if you see how that works. Yeah. All right. Now, in these intentional conversations, what you're trying to do is when someone is interested in what you have to say, you want to try to set a meeting. Okay, so a meeting or lunch meeting, and that's where you use a sample deal package. Okay, you're going to get the big questions out of the way. They're gonna ask you questions. Well, why should I invest in multifamily versus the stock market? Why should I invest with you and your team? What are some of the risks? What are the terms? And they're gonna ask you all these questions, and you can get those major questions out of the way. And it may be done in a meeting, or it could be done over the course of weeks or months. Everyone's a little bit different. But what you're looking for at the end of the day is you want to get verbal commitments. Okay, verbal commitment says, hey, if you find me a deal that looks substantially like what you just showed me in the sample deal package, I'm in for 50,000, 75, 100,000, whatever it is. Okay. And so now what happens is you have the big questions out of the way. You have a verbal commitment. And so let's say 3-4 months goes by or whatever, and you finally have a real deal. You call up Frank and you say, Frank, I have a real deal. He says, great, send me the deal package. Send over the deal package, and it looks substantial like the other one. They're not going to ask you big, hairy questions. They might have some small questions about the deal. And now you got money raising done right. Okay, you have financial commitments before the deal. Okay, if you have that, doesn't that give you confidence to raise money? If you have 5 people behind you with $50,000 each, I mean, couldn't you confidently make offers on $1 million building? Yeah, you could. And if you follow the process I just talked about using the sample deal package, you can raise the money in days because you already did the work up front. So you always want to start this work right now, today as you stand. I remember, and I knew I might be a little skeptical this can be done. I remember Ben Morley, he had this conversation when he first started talking to me, and he goes, just so you know, I'm very, very uncomfortable with raising money, especially from friends and family. Okay, that's my number one hang up. And I remember in talking about this stuff and walking him off the ledge, and about 13 months after that conversation, he had closed his first deal. It was a 9-unit up in Pennsylvania. So if Ben, who specifically calls this out, can raise money, everybody can, because he was a really hard nut to crack. But if you're even skeptical, you say, Michael, that's great, that's fantastic. But if the idea of raising money still scares you, I have another solution for you. If we decide to work together, I have something called a deal desk, and I'll tell you about that a little bit later on. But basically, you find a deal, I'll raise the money for it. Okay? So I want money to get off the table completely. It's not an issue. All right, so now I showed you how you can raise all of the money you need to do your first deal, either by doing it yourself or partnering with me. Isn't that awesome? Type yes in the chat box if that's awesome. I think that's really, really powerful, is learning the art of raising money, because at that point, the sky is literally the limit. All right, so let's move on to secret number 2, which is how do you get your offers accepted, especially if you're a newbie and you don't have proof of funds. I remember, my gosh, when I was a newbie, and I told you a little bit earlier, I started calling brokers up, and they treated me like a newbie. And I was looking for deals. This was back in 2007 in Texas. And I barely said a few words when the broker would ask me to send them proof of funds along with my apartment investing resume, of which I had neither. And that usually ended a conversation. And I was like, my gosh, what did I do wrong? So here's what I would say. I would say something like, hey, my name is Michael. I'm a real estate investor. I'm interested in purchasing multi-unit properties around $1 million with, at least a 10% return. Can you send me over some deals? Now, it took me a while to figure out what was going on because I didn't know any better. So I was making several mistakes. First of all, I was not using the right language. Second of all, I wasn't proactively addressing the 2 main concerns every broker has when a new investor calls in. Number 1, do they have the money? Number 2, do they have the experience? In other words, can this person at the end of the line close, or are they wasting my time? And that's when I realized the power of education. And this is how I fixed the problem. Now, there wasn't a lot of education at the time, so I kind of did this by trial and error. I did take read some books, and I kind of pieced it together. But I started using a different script. Okay, here's kind of what this sounded like. Just pay attention to the sound of it. Hi, my name is Michael. I work with a group of high net worth individuals. We would like to expand into the Atlanta market. Now we already have property management company XYZ on board, and we're continuing to build our team. We're looking for deals in the $1 to $2.5 million range with at least an 8% cap rate going in, and are looking for stable value add deals but no repositions. Is there anything you have in your pipeline that you can send me over to review? So here's what I did with this script. 3 things. Pay attention here. All right, here we go. First of all, I'm using insider words like cap rate and reposition. Reposition means something like a really big renovation. I addressed the money part because I said I was working with high net worth individuals, and I addressed the experience part because I said 2 things. One is I was working with XYZ management company, and I was expanding, implying that I had properties in another market. Now, none of these are lies, by the way. I actually, I was working with high net worth individuals, even though I had no one committed money at the time, and I was expanding. I was just expanding from a total number of 0 units. Now, a most surprising thing happened. I was never asked for proof of funds after that script. So, do you see how a little bit of education can make a huge difference? Type yes in the chat box if you see this. Yeah. So that's when I realized I didn't actually need previous experience, and what happened is it gives you so much confidence. I mean, this is a story of Nick up in New York. We had a conversation about this. He went to his I think it was local RIA, and he had just signed up for a program. He was very excited. It was the first RIA meeting a couple of weeks after, and he went in there, and he came back all like frustrated. He goes, I was talking to this investor, and he immediately asked me for my track record and my resume. I said, Nick, just chill out for a second, be patient, finish your trading, improve your language, and build your team around you. And he did that, and he went back and he says, my gosh, you're not going to believe it. I talked to 2 other investors. Not once did they ask me for my track record or resume at all. So this gave him a huge confidence. A little bit of education, using a better language, building a bit of team around you gave him confidence, and that goes through when you're dealing with investors and brokers. All right, so, and by the way, if you ask for proof of funds, it's a sure bet that you just sounded like a newbie. And that will, and literally, trust me on this, 98% of the time you will not be asked for proof of funds. Sometimes 2% you are. And you're probably thinking, well, that's great, Michael. What if the broker asked me for a proof of funds? Okay, now, like I said, in 98% of the cases, it's not required. And I polled a few of our students about this stuff when they just got started. This is Philippe. We'll see him a little later on. But he says, look, I have not been asked for proof of funds one time. Laura Guy had said the same thing. Because, okay, I was asked for proof of funds, but it now went away. And by the way, as she gained her confidence, that started going away. And if you are getting asked for proof of funds, the best way is to push back on the broker. And if that doesn't work, making contingent on a signed letter of intent. That's how you can deal with that. And if you are still asked for a proof of funds and we decide to work together, I will provide you proof of funds for up to $1 million. Okay? So again, I don't want your lack of experience or your lack of money to hold you back at all. So this is why I wanted to show you how you can get your offer accepted even if you're newbie and you don't have the proof of funds. All right, so we covered those 2 parts. Secret number 3 is how the heck do you make an offer? And I remember when I got started, it took me 4 hours to, quote, make an offer. And it's because I didn't have the technique I'm about to show you now or the tools that we have today. And today we can do the same thing in 10 minutes. Right? So here's what I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you how to do that. Type yes in the chat box if you're ready to learn more about the 10-minute offer. I'm going to go kind of into detail on this a little bit here. So here's a 10-minute offer and overview. Step 1 is you get the marketing package. Step 2 is you adjust the net operating income. So net operating income, or NOI, is income minus expenses equals the NOI, or net operating. So you adjust that using some rules of thumbs, and I'll show you what those are in a second. Then you adjust the price, okay, based on that adjusted NOI, and then you make your offer. It's that simple. And the good news about this is that you're not using anything that's not in your broker's marketing package or that comes from your broker. So you're not spending hours on the internet or making phone calls. You're just using what's provided to you by the broker. All right, here we go. Step number 1 is you want to get the marketing package, okay? The marketing package has things in there like net operating income is $60,000. the cap rate is 8%. Now, the cap rate is an interesting thing. The cap rate is what's used to value the real estate. So in this particular case, the price equals the net operating income, $60,000, divided by the cap rate of 8%. And so the asking price, therefore, is $750,000. And the broker, if it's not already in the marketing package, will tell you what cap rate he used. And that cap rate comes from sales of other comparable properties. And it's basically done by sales comps. Appraisers know this number very well, but your broker is intimately familiar because that's how they priced the asset. And that cap rate number from your broker is usually pretty accurate. What's normally not accurate is the net operating income. And that's because the income is typically overstated and the expenses understated. And that's what we're going to leverage for the 10-minute offer. So this is what it looks like right now. So you have the gross potential annual income of $100,000. Let's say the physical vacancy is 3%. So you have net annual income of $97,000. Then the annual expenses are 38%. And that leaves you with a net operating income of $60,000. The same thing that was in the marketing package, all right? You apply the market cap rate to that and you get a valuation of $750,000. So everything makes sense, except for a few things. Number one, vacancy is never 3%. It's more like 10%, okay? And annual expenses are never 38%. They're more like 50%. So now we get into step two. You adjust the net operating income. So that becomes 10%. Vacancy is very rarely 3%. And the expenses are 38% of income in the marketing package. Nah, I don't think so. Let's use this rule of thumb of 50%. NOI, therefore, is not 60,000, but it's more like 45,000. Now, I want to apply the 8% cap rate to that number. Okay, so I have an NOI of $60,000, cap rate 8%. So now that's $45,000. And I use my formula. My adjusted price now is $45,000 divided by my cap rate of 8, which is now $562,000. Okay, so the adjusted value, the quote real value, is not 675 or whatever it was. It's now 562. And step 4 then is to make an offer. So, and this is how you do it. So you call up the broker. Let's call him Sam. Sam, I thank you for sending that deal over. It's fantastic. 8% is the cap rate I'm looking for. So really cool. But, you know, the income was a bit low. The vacancy rate was a bit low in my experience, quote, my experience. It's typically 10%. And the expenses are 38. In my experience, what I've seen is more like 50%. Now, I didn't have the time to delve into why that is. I'm looking at a lot of deals, Sam. You can understand that. But I do know that the reality is more like 50%. And so the NOI isn't $60,000, but it's more like $45,000. And, you know, the broker might grumble a little bit at this, but you can't argue with your reasoning. So, you know, it looks like the adjusted real value is not 750, but it's more like 560. Is there any flexibility on the seller or probably not? Wow. Now, what have you just done? Okay, let's reflect on this 10-minute offer. First of all, I didn't spend more than 10 minutes analyzing this deal. Number two, you just made your first offer. And as an additional bonus, you were very responsive to the broker. Is that pretty cool? Type yes in the chat box if you think that's pretty cool. Very cool. 10-minute offer. So now let's say now if they don't respond back to you, or they fall off the chair laughing their butt off, you've now only invested 10 minutes in this thing. Now, on the other hand, if they say, well, can you put something in writing? Well, at that point, you can sharpen your pencil and you can use an analysis tool like the syndicated deal analyzer. And now you can sharpen your pencil. Now you can spend the 4 hours on that because now you know you have a motivated seller, but not before. And that's the main mistake I was making before, is I was spending 4 hours on an analysis deep dive, which was like, it was like terrible brain surgery or something. So now you might be wondering, okay, that's great that I can make an offer in 10 minutes. And I hope you find that useful. Really, really useful. That's pretty cool. But how do I find deals to analyze in the first place? All right, so, okay, so would you like to know the best way to find deals? Type yes in the chat box if this is a question on your mind right now.
For those of you that don't.
Yeah, and that would be an outstanding question. I was stumped by this early on, but then discovered that the single best way to find deals is through brokers. And there's a variety of different sites out there, and you can Google these things, but LoopNet is probably the best one out there. LoopNet.com. Type in your criteria, and you'll get all these deals. Now you can sometimes find a deal on LoopNet. You know, the saying goes, you know, the deals go on LoopNet kind of the die when no one wants them and they've been picked through. But what it's really useful for is finding brokers. Okay, so this is the most effective way, is to do this through brokers, and I'll tell you why. Brokers make it their business, their full-time job, to know as many apartment building owners in a city as possible. They will send them postcards. They will call them. Oh, would you like a free valuation on your apartment building? Would you like me to take you to lunch? That's what they do. The good ones do, at least. Okay, so when an owner is thinking of selling, they're going to be the first to know. So that is their job. Now, you can do other stuff later on, like send letters or spend time at the courthouse. Okay, we've done shenanigans like that, but the low-hanging fruit is your brokers. Okay, so this is how you do it. You go to LoopNet, you make a spreadsheet, you put in all the brokers, or you can even hire a virtual assistant to do that, and then you call them. You use the script similar to before. After you've educated yourself and you've built a team around you, then you call these brokers, introduce themselves, ask them for what you're looking for, and put on their buyer's list. Okay, so that's how you do it. And you just keep track with those brokers. You might even consider putting them on an email program like MailChimp, so you can almost send them like once a month. You can send them updated what's going on. So you just need to stay in touch with those brokers and be responsive to them when they send you a deal. You apply a 10-minute offer, and if they say, hey, why don't you make an offer, you can then make a more formal offer, typically through a letter of intent. And a letter of intent is just, it's not a legally binding document. It's typically a page or maybe sometimes two. It says what the price is, what the down payment is, what the due diligence period is, when the closing timeline is, and that's it. And once you guys agree on that, you then hand that to the attorney, and the attorney drafts a sales agreement. Okay, does that make sense? All right. So now you might be wondering, my gosh, I've heard it's really hard to find deals right now. You know, is this really a good time to do all this stuff? And the answer is yes. But, okay, deals aren't going to fall from the sky. And if I look at the fact is, there are people doing deals. I know that because our deal desk is red hot of deals coming in from all over the country. So I know people are doing deals, and our students are doing this also. But what I find that they have in common is they have hustle. Now, this is Patrick Duffy, young guy, 26 years old, and he has no money, no experience. But what he did have is hustle. Okay, so he did, December of 2016, he signs up for the program. I'll tell you more of that in a little bit. And he starts hitting the phones, making offers with the SCA. 3 months later, he ratifies an LOI in a 69-unit apartment building that he closed with us in that April. No prior experience, no money, but hungry. Today, Patrick owns over 600 units. He quit his job about a year after he got started. Pretty cool, right? Now, is it a surprise that he's doing deals? Nope. Not so much. He's hustling, okay? So if you got hustle, you can do this as well. People are doing deals every single week. Okay, here's number 4. I'm going to give you some tips about what you can do to get your first deal in 90 days. Now, everybody wants something right now. And as I said in the beginning, this is not a get-rich-quick scheme, okay? This is your 1 to 2 year retirement plan right now, which is pretty fast in the scheme of retirement. But I want to set your expectations before I even get into this stuff, okay? This kind of irks me a little bit. There are some nice shortcuts I'll tell you about in a second. But from your expectations, okay? Just your expectations. Give yourself a year to do a first deal, okay? And then another year to do another 2 deals, and then you're done, okay? And now I'll show you a few people who have done it much faster than that. But just take some pressure off yourself. Think a year, think 2 years, okay? So, but here's some things you can do to do a deal in the next 90 days, okay? So first of all, Ed just did a deal. He signed up, and 3 months later, he closed on his first 22-unit apartment building deal. And he just hit the phones really hard, and he found this deal through a property manager that he was interviewing. And interestingly enough, he found the second deal through the same property manager. He was just really networking really hard. So it's definitely possible to do your first deal in the 3 months just by going the traditional route of what we just talked about. But there's a couple of things you can do to kind of fast track. So the first thing you can do is you can buy small. Okay, now we've been talking about really going as big as possible as you can and giving yourself 12 months to kind of do it. So you want to stretch your comfort zone and you want to kind of push the envelope a little bit. But you can accelerate substantially if you buy small. Now, why should you consider buying small? For example, small is a duplex, okay? Well, there's a lot more of them. Okay, a lot more of them. You need a lot less money and a lot less complex. A lot of people, especially if you're already doing some single family house rentals, can easily wrap yourself around the idea of a duplex, and you probably already have the means or the resources to take one down probably the next 30 days. So one strategy certainly is to buy small. And this is the way Drew Kniffin, what he did. He decides, I always ask, when do you decide multifamily? Decision point is very, very important. I ask everybody, when did you decide? And in Drew's case, he remembered exactly, it was New Year's Eve 2014, because his timeline of single family house investing was not fast enough. So it took him 3 months to do that first deal. He did small. He went small, and he did another small one a month later, okay? And then he did his first monster deal 2 months later, did 32 units. And he had built up so much momentum that he quit his job in just 8 months. Is that pretty cool? So you can get there with doing small deals as well. It counts just, I used to think, oh my gosh, if it's not a 100+ deal, it's not worth doing. I no longer think that at all. It's because of the law of the first deal. We'll talk about that in a little bit here. But 8 months to quit his job, and he did it with a 3 unit, all right? Another thing you can do is you can partner. You can partner with people like me, or people with me specifically, or others as well, right? So I'll tell you more about this deal desk. I referenced it earlier, but it's really a fantastic way. If you don't have to worry about the money at all, you just focus on finding a deal. You bring that deal to me or someone like me. They like the deal, and they'll raise the money for it. So it's a really fantastic way to fast track your first deal. If you are a high net worth individual or high income earner, the easiest and fastest way for you to do your first deal is by passively investing. And maybe you want to use it as a bridge to getting into your own syndications yourself, but that is a fantastic way to jumpstart your investing career. And the third option is you become a money raiser. This is really, really cool. You just raise money for people like me, or for me, or for people like me. And the cool thing about it is the equity you get for raising the money is equal to or greater than if you were to find the deal and bring it to a syndicator as well. So these are some things that you can use to fast track it. You can go small, okay? You can be a deal finder, you can be a passive investor, you can be a money raiser. Okay, so now I showed you how you do your first deal in 90 days. Is that pretty cool? Type yes in the chat box if you think you can do one of these 4 things. Yeah. Now let me ask you a question. You know, if you could apply secret number 1 and then secret number 2, so secret number 1 is so you can raise as much money as you need for your first deal, either from your own network or for me, and then you did what I showed you in secret number 2 to get instant credibility with your brokers and your investors, even if you have no track record. Then you use secret number 3 to make offers in just 10 minutes. And let's say you want to do a deal in the next 9 days and follow secret number 4. Do you think you could be successful and do your first deal sometime in the next 12 months? Type yes in the chat box if you can see yourself applying those 4 secrets and doing that in the next 12 months. Yeah. Now, if you see that happening, can you see yourself replacing your current income in the next 2 or 3 years, or 1 to 2 years, like Drew did? So type yes in the chat box if you can see that happening as well. Yeah. All right. Okay. So how many? Yeah. So it's impossible for me to show you everything you need to do your first deal in this, hour-long presentation. But I did try to cover as much as possible. I hope you got a lot of value out of that. I did create a very special package for you who are ready to move forward and want to implement this new opportunity. So is it okay if I spend about 10 minutes to go over this very special offer I created to you? Type yes in the chat box if you're okay with that. Okay, awesome. Appreciate that. So my passion, why I'm here today, is to help you do your first deal, and so that you can become financially free in the next 1 to 2 years. So if you want that, then I invite you to continue your journey with me. And what I have for you is the ultimate guide to buying apartment buildings with private money. It's probably the most comprehensive system on the planet to help you do your first apartment building deal with other people's money. There are components of this program that no one else on the planet offers at all. I'll point those out to you, but this is a very, very unique program and so I'm really, really excited about that. The first component is the online course.